Alright, this is your final warning. We're going to be talking spoilers of Star Wars Episode 7. Seriously, turn back now if you haven't seen it. Go get the ticket and then come back. Alright, first of all, everyone that I thought was nuts on Force Friday, remember that was that big retail day when all of a sudden all the stores got the new Star Wars toys and people were buying them up in droves even though they had no idea what those characters were or how they interacted or if their performances might suck? Can you imagine if they had like a Jar Jar Binks toy pre-released before the prequels and everyone went and bought that thing and then went and saw the movie? Well, you guys are super safe. All you BB-8 owners, I'm envious. All of you that were smart enough to buy a Finn or a Kylo Ren or a Rey character, even before we knew how these characters were going to interact with each other or how important they might be in terms of the story, good job. Let me just start saying by saying that BB-8, I kind of had this weird thing where I saw that BB-8 was coming and I'm like, oh, well, they're going to replace R2-D2 with BB-8. And initially, I wasn't really sold on the spinning ball thing. I thought it was kind of simplistic and kind of stupid looking to me. And just in terms of functionality, it didn't seem to be very functional. Well, I've been proven completely wrong. BB-8 is cute as all heck, extremely functional with those doors that open and you never know what's hidden behind them. He's got all kinds of different tools. And in terms of even the ball design that I thought would be stupid in terms of it being on certain environments or out in space, they rectified that pretty easily with those little grappling hook systems that showed up when he was getting bounced around the Millennium Falcon where he was able to stabilize himself. So very well thought out, very cute design. It was a particular highlight for me when BB-8 met R2-D2, even though R2-D2 was decommissioned or in low power mode at the time. And if anything, it's weird that I was kind of less excited for C-3PO. Now we've got these very cute droids, we've got a few of them, and C-3PO I loved in the original trilogy, and then something about how they used him in the prequels got to me where I didn't appreciate that character as much. And in Episode 7, he kind of just feels tacked in. And definitely one of the things that I didn't like is his stupid red arm. What the hell is that about? It'd be one thing if they had even just a one-sentence explanation for what happened there, but all he talks about is, Han Solo can't recognize him because of his new red arm. That just, to me, feels like such an obvious grab for, hey, we're going to sell a bunch of new C-3PO toys because now he's got a red arm. It just, without a good explanation for it, that's where my brain goes with it. Oh my God, they're trying to sell new toys because otherwise people would just use their old C-3PO. But that being said, the returning characters, I think the biggest moment for me that I enjoyed was bumping into the Millennium Falcon, especially in the way that they set it up about, oh, we're not going to take that junker. I did not see that coming at all, that they were all of a sudden talking about the Millennium Falcon. And that was a moment where I felt like things were getting really special. In particular, the first 20 or 30 minutes of that movie are awesome. I want to go back and see it again specifically for the first 20 or 30 minutes. It's just so good that they recaptured the spirit right off the bat using different characters. Then they did something really special in terms of shifting the attention towards the stormtroopers. I don't think we've really seen that, at least in the big screen narratives before, where a stormtrooper all of a sudden kind of became humanistic to us, was all of a sudden shown some traits of having independent thought. And that's even before I knew that he was going to defect from being a stormtrooper. Just that moment of him being scared in the middle of the battle was very interesting, very well done. And it really set up that Finn character to be likable. Of course, when he rescues Poe, I thought Poe was a fantastic character. He feels to me a bit like the new Han Solo in terms of if we're going to match up the new characters to the old characters. I think that Poe is kind of, Luke was a great pilot as well, but Poe kind of has that grizzled look to him. He has the jacket, at least the jacket that he gave to Finn, so I guess you can split them for Han Solo. And obviously, it looks like Rey is setting up to be the new Padawan, the new Luke Skywalker for this trilogy, which I think is awesome. Speaking of Luke, I'm pretty happy with what they did there. I think I had heard so much on the internet that everyone was thinking, oh, Luke's going to be evil, Luke's going to be the new emperor. Instead, they used him as the story's MacGuffin, but it wasn't quite a MacGuffin because they actually had a payoff for it where it is Luke Skywalker and they do find him. I mean, it's debatable if he's still a MacGuffin or not because they really didn't explain anything about him. But they're leaving that wide open to continue on the series, which I think was a great move. I was slightly disappointed that they didn't give him one line. And I think that would have just been cool. Just a simple, maybe 2 or 3 words. But that being said, it was an extremely bold choice to have him only in that last scene. I think it was really cool of Mark Hamill to take that gig up. Apparently he had to get into shape, lose a bunch of weight, and he has a beard that he has to grow in by contract for doing that role. So he went through all that for literally that one scene. Of course, I think with the promise that there's going to be much more coming up for him in episode 8. Princess Leia, it was nice to see Carrie Fisher. I kind of like that they've grown her role into being the general overseeing everything that's going on with this new rebellion. But there was something about the delivery of her words that didn't sound quite right to me. Like, I don't know if she has dentures now or something, but some of her speech sounded a little muddled. I don't know. And honestly, I don't know if there's anything that she could have done to correct that. But it just took me out just for little microseconds of like, oh, what's going on with Leia there? That being said, writing out the obvious story that her and Han had a romance at some point, and they've now spawned at least one child that we know of, which I highly, highly suspect. And this is the great thing about Star Wars is speculation. This is something that all the fans love. We get to tear into this universe and start talking about all these new ideas. I highly, highly suspect that we're going to find out that Kylo Ren and Rey might be related to each other. They kind of led to that a little bit by having Rey saying the same things as Han Solo. We know that she is Force sensitive, so she's probably of the Skywalker bloodline at some point. But they definitely didn't get to it in this movie. Maybe that's going to be the I am your father moment for the next movie. We will see. Very cool that they had the Darth Vader's helmet cameo, but that they really tied it in with Kylo Ren's character's quest to explore the dark side and to be more like his grandfather. And I thought that as a bad guy, Kylo Ren did really good. I know some YouTube commenters are talking about the mask, and it didn't make sense because Darth Vader wore the mask because it was part of his apparatus to keep him alive. This guy's just wearing a mask and he's taking it off kind of whenever he wants. Very, very minor knock to the story. I think it might have been cool if they limited how much he took off the mask in this first one, but honestly, this is super, super minor. They could have had one big moment where they revealed that this was Han Solo's son, and Han Solo tells him, look, Gary gets all excited for Star Wars. Han Solo tells him, we know you don't need that mask. You're not like your grandfather. He needed it to breathe or something. And he definitely played loosey-goosey with the mask a little bit. That being said, I think him showing rage was very cool. It kind of reminded me a little bit of, maybe that's one place where they winked to the prequel trilogies a little bit. They got the rage thing right. I think he was way better at it than Hayden Christensen trying to play those moments. So very, very good work there. In terms of returning character, Chewbacca. It's weird. Chewbacca used to be my favorite character when I was really young and the original trilogy came out. And in this movie, I found that he just kind of fit in as a little bit of a background piece. It was, I don't know, there was just something about it where I wasn't noticing him as much. And that's kind of weird because this character is so big. He's just large in terms of the shots. But how they wrote his character, he really doesn't do a whole lot in this movie outside of the big moment, which we're going to talk about. This is a spoiler discussion. When Han dies and then he goes on that rage and he takes out a bunch of stormtroopers and blows up the bombs that they've planted. So, the biggest knock right now that I can see on the many YouTube reviews is that this movie is basically following all the story beats of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. I do see that. I think there was enough that was different that was going on in this story, that it's not a huge knock. But I do recognize that. As a matter of fact, I said in the non-spoiler review that this is kind of like Jurassic World is to Jurassic Park. Definitely Star Wars Episode 7 is to Star Wars Episode 4. This is a trend that Hollywood's doing now. I don't know that anyone's really caught this or called it out, but I'm going to call it the serialized reboot. Come on down. Come on down. Because essentially they're rebooting a story using the exact same plot points that they've used previously, but they're keeping it serialized by saying that it's a sequel. So I'm calling it the serialized reboot. I think we're going to see a lot more of that for other properties in the future. It seems to be a trend that Hollywood's definitely doing lately, and honestly one that's working. For Jurassic Park, it was great to get back to Jurassic Park, but have this new story be told, kind of with all the same old story beats, but some new stuff added as well. And Star Wars Episode 7 definitely feels like there's some elements of that. However, there's a lot of new stuff going on here also. My favorite thing about Episode 7 is how it looks. There are so many practical effects. They used design elements from the old movies. There was props that seemed to be either brought back or recreated from the old movies. It was really cool to see all that. However, they did have, I think there was 4 CGI characters, if I remember. And there's a bit of a problem in that the practical effects look so good, and you're getting such good performances from your actors, that the CGI ones stick out like a giant sore thumb. And I don't know that they needed CGI in all those cases. There's obvious cases where they had like the water pit that Finn gets to when he's dying for water on Jakku, and they have what looks like some kind of big space pig or something that's just giant. Obviously that's going to be CGI. In the Millennium Falcon scene where they have the monsters with the tentacles, whipping up everybody and chewing them up, obviously that's going to be CGI. The new Emperor, God, I can't even remember his name. It's so stupid sounding. I want to say it's Snork or Snoke. The Snorks, wasn't that an old cartoon? Snoke. I just thought looked exactly like Gollum, and apparently is being played by the same guy that played Gollum. But if you're doing him using CGI, why are you making the character look exactly the same? I do not understand. And that one in particular, I don't know why it was CGI. It is almost a humanoid form. Granted, it was on a much bigger scale, but you could have a live actor do that with makeup effects and then increase the size of him extremely easily using, I've got stuff on my computer to do that. That's nothing. So I don't know why they opted for that character to be CGI. And the name definitely is getting knocked around on the internet a bit. I think it's the one misfire in terms of naming the characters in this movie, which is pretty good because there's a lot of what some people would call creative names going on in this film. I think one of the coolest moments was after the movie. I was talking to my wife about it, and she was saying that she wished that Star Wars had a strong lead female character like that back in the original trilogy, because obviously, Leia was a strong character, but she was a princess. She had to be rescued. That's pretty much the damsel in distress trope popping up right there. And Rey is a much different type of strong female lead character, and I'm really excited to continue the journey with that character. Also, we start having some ethnicity pop into the Star Wars universe. Yes, granted, we had our Lando Calrissian before, but there's Finn is a much more prominent character in terms of this story. I believe, I heard that the actor that plays Poe, I think Angry Joe was talking about the actor that plays Poe is Guatemalan. So it's cool to see that it is a true universe that is fleshing out there. That includes all kinds of different people and different kinds of aliens. That was really cool when we got into the new I'm going to call it the new cantina scene, where all of a sudden there was a bunch of very creative aliens. There was even a robot that kind of reminded me of the robot from Metropolis that originally inspired C-3PO. There was like a re-inspiration of the robot from Metropolis in one of those scenes. And just great battles. The battles were really, really good in this. Something I absolutely hated about the prequels were how junky all the battles looked. They were trying to cram so much on screen that it would just look like a mishmash of crap. And in this movie, they got it right. They toned it down to, you would have a couple of X-Wings in a scene, you'd have maybe 5 TIE fighters, and you can see the X-Wings taking them out, and some really interesting cinematography in terms of how the camera would move to capture all that movement. Way different than the prequels. The prequels were just a complete junky mess when it came to scenes like that. So it was really cool to see kind of those basic elements come back. So one last thing I wanted to talk about is the prequels. I think the intent of the prequels is a bit more clear to me now. When I came out of Star Wars Episode 7 yesterday, I said, well, this is a huge smack to the prequels, because it's basically showing George Lucas that, hey, someone can do what the audience wanted, which was bring us back into that same universe that the original trilogy happened in. That is still my biggest criticism of the prequels. They do not feel like they're in the same universe as the rest of Star Wars. The vehicles are all hyper-developed. They look like they're much more futuristic than the vehicles did in the original trilogy. The sets, all the CGI that's used, none of it in terms of design seemed to match the original trilogy, and this movie gets all of those points right. However, that made me think about the prequels. And I've had this saying kicking around in my head for a couple years now, that a new Star Wars movie is never going to be the next Star Wars. And I say that because Star Wars, when it came out, was a revolution of a certain type in terms of filmmaking. It was definitely an evolution, but it really, and it did borrow from a lot of other aspects of literature and previous science fiction storytelling and pull that through, but it weaved it together in an all-new way that woke everyone up, and we said, hey, this is how good movies can be, and we all told our friends about it, and it played in the theater forever, and it made a ton of money. And I always thought that no sequel would ever get to do that again. I think I've now been proven wrong. I think Episode 7 is showing us that we can take that old model of movie making, still make a movie based off that model, but incorporate some new elements and push that into the future. The prequels, I believe it was George Lucas's intent to really drive filmmaking into a whole new space, rather than give the audience what we were expecting in terms of a Star Wars sequel. I think that's why he was so big on all the technology. I don't know if you remember, but I think the second episode was shot almost entirely on digital media. He was inventing projection systems and getting them installed in theaters for these movies being screened. He was really trying to affect cinema in a much different way, using the Star Wars brand, but not quite giving us the sequel or the prequels that we were expecting. And that's where this movie just gets it all completely right. So I think his heart was in the right place, but his intent and his reach, his dream of reinventing the cinema for a second time in his life might have been a bit too much. I think most filmmakers are lucky to get one big shot at that, and he definitely had that shot and cashed in on it in many, many ways. And I think, admittedly, even he seems to appreciate this new sequel. So how can you not? It pays so much respect to the original trilogy. All right, that's it for this in-depth spoiler discussion. If I missed anything or there's any other aspects you want to chat about, drop them in the comment box below. I'll be sure to check that out. I hope you're having a great, great holiday week, and I will catch you next time on the Geek and Dorks channel. Take care.